Hey everybody, welcome back to Scotlea Hot Rods. I'm Dr. Patrick and we're starting a new project today, MATER No.4. This will be the fourth version of this truck that we've built, but we're going to do things a little bit differently this time. In the past, the first three versions were all based on the 55 to 57 1-ton or ton-and-a-half truck. And it never really looked just right to me. I thought the cab was wrong. So after a lot of thinking and mulling around and sleeping on it and coming up with things in the middle of the night, I finally got an idea, and I've got a customer that's willing to roll the dice and take a gamble on this. But I think it's going to turn out perfect. This time though, we're going to start off with a completely different chassis. The problem with the 55 to 57 1-ton and up trucks is you can't get brake parts for them. Doors, interior, fenders, all that stuff is the same for the half-ton and up, but the brakes are different on the 1-tons and bigger, and you just simply can't get parts and pieces. So this time we're starting with a 79 Chevy, that's a square body, 1-ton chassis frame. And I know it's really long, we're actually going to have to cut this down a little bit, but this will give us the ability to get new parts and pieces, plus power steering, front disc brakes, a whole lot better suspension system than that straight axle front end that was in those 55 to 57s. So it'll ride a lot better as well. Still these springs in the back, but we've got all the parts and pieces we need. We're going to be combining this with a couple of different things. The front end on MATER is really close to the 55 to 57 trucks. The track width on these later model, the square body trucks, is basically the same, so the fenders and everything will fit on it and look just right. But we're going to be using a different cab. Let me show you that. So here we go. This is the cab from a 72 International Lodestar 1600. Now, International used the same cab from like 58 to 78. It was basically the same cab, they just used different fenders and front ends on depending on how big the truck was, and these were the big trucks. So I like this because it really has more of the shape that is, I think, right for MATER. Now I'll compare it to the 55 to 57 trucks in a minute, but the big thing that I like about this is the shape of the B-pillar, or the back of the cab, is more upright. MATER always had more of a squared off looking cab, and this has that shape. We still have a little bit of a wraparound window here, but one of the other things that is different between this and the Chevy trucks is the Chevy trucks have what I call an eyebrow that comes out over the windshield and tucks back in. And MATER didn't have that. These, it's nice and smooth. We'll be able to rearrange the shape of this to give him that, raised eyebrow look. But we're starting off with a cab that has more of the shape that's right for MATER. The size-wise, width-wise, compared to the 55 to 57 trucks, is pretty much the same. So the fenders and front end they won't bolt up. There's a difference in this part right here that's absent in the Chevy trucks. So we'll have to do a lot of metal work. But I think in the end, the shape is going to be great, and it will confuse people because they'll be like, what kind of truck is that? It's like, well, it's a International Chevrolet, square body, a little bit of everything. Because that's what MATER was. There was no, he is this actual make model of record. It was never specified. There's no real detail on that. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to mix and match and put it all together and make it work. Okay, so here's your 55 to 57 Chevy cab. Now this is a big back window cab that wraps all the way around, and that's incorrect for MATER. We're not using this cab for that. But you can see from this that here is a backwards taper, or kind of a forward lean to the B-pillar, whereas the International cab is very upright. So this is a little bit different. You see the same thing in the A-pillar as it leans back or tapers forward, however you want to call it, creating this kind of weird geometric shape that I can't remember from high school for the window opening, versus International's more of a squared look. That's more appropriate for MATER. It looks more like what he is in the cartoon. The other thing is his eyebrow. See how it kind of leans out? The windshield tucks back in here a couple inches, so you've got about 2 inches of overhang over the window Kind of like, I don't know, maybe they kept the rain off or something. But MATER didn't have that. So the International cab having more of a curve right here looks more correct than these Chevy trucks, which is what we've always used in the past, because that's kind of what the front end looked like, which is what we're going to go to next. So here's the Chevrolet 55 to 57 front end, mostly assembled. And you can see MATER in this a lot when you look at the cartoons. There are a couple of small differences you really have to look at. The big one being, again, another eyebrow over the headlights. And MATER didn't have that. He was more squared off, looked more like a Studebaker truck, which was flat in the front around the headlights. So one of the things we'll do is we'll actually be getting rid of this area here, changing the shape of this and the top of the fender to match on both sides. Of course, he's only got one headlight, but we'll reshape this to get rid of this eyebrow and flatten this out a little bit and make it look more correct. But other than that, the shape of the fenders and the flow into the doors is going to match up with the International cab really well. We'll do some fancy magic metal work in here, a lot of hammering and banging and welding, but it won't be noticeable in the end. Everybody's going to be like, what kind of truck is that? So differences in the front end really right there. Of course, we get rid of all the grill, flatten that out for the big mouth and teeth and everything. But the shape of the fenders is really correct from Tow MATER to the Chevrolet trucks as far as the general shape of it. And we'll make a couple little changes. But combining a square body chassis, an International cab, and Chevrolet front end, I think is going to give us probably the best MATER we've ever built. Because we always try to make things better than the last time. And if you haven't watched our video on Tow MATER number 3, go back, we do a good walk around, show you all the bits and pieces on that. And we're going to be doing a lot of upgrades on that as well. This MATER is going to talk automatically upon approach to it. It'll have field detection sensors, so when somebody walks up, it'll talk. It'll have lights that come on and off automatically. It's going to be really neat. So stay tuned for this series as we're building as we go. Now, first thing we're going to have to do is tackle that chassis. And like I said, it's a little too long. So we're going to go inside now and we're going to make it shorter. Okay, we're back in the shop here with our chassis, which I said we have to shorten this down. And I've already cut one side out, and I'm going to explain how we came to the conclusion of how much to shorten it and how to cut this down. So first of all, this was a 1-ton Chevrolet truck, which is way too long for Tow MATER. And how do we come about deciding how long it really should be? And that's pretty simple. We look at pictures, we look at toys, and we do scale measurements. We start with a small toy and we scale it up bigger and bigger and bigger. Our one known constant is tire size. So we know the size of the tire on a toy, we scale it up until it's the size of the tire on a real car, and then we know the length of the vehicle. It's a little bit of math, it's not too complicated. But we know in this particular chassis, we need to take 20 inches out of it, which we were really lucky that we've got a nice flat area that we can do this, just shorten this up. So come in here close and I'll show you how we do this. All right, as you can see by the one I've already cut, we don't cut the chassis in a nice straight line. We don't cut it straight down and then butt weld it up together. The reason for that is it's not strong. When you cut something directly in half and you've got a seam like this, all it takes is a little bit of push on the top of that for it to split and break open. So a straight down seam is never a good idea. So we do this in two 45-degree cuts. So when we weld it together, we've actually got a longer weld than we would have had if we went straight down. Plus, if we put stress directly over that, it's not going to push down and break it open. It's going to spread that stress out over the whole frame. So it makes it really strong. Plus, once we put these two together and weld that seam, we'll go back inside and put a square plate that covers the entire seam on the inside, just for a little bit of extra strength. And not that we'll ever need it, but just to be sure. So now we're going to go in, fire up the plasma torch, cut this side out, and then we'll slide them together and see how it fits up together. so we got it pulled together now. Everything lined up exactly as it should have. Got exactly 20 inches out of each side. I did cross measure, length measure to some marks I had made previously to make sure everything was square so it wouldn't end up crooked like this or something. So we've got it pretty well lined up, tack welded. I've already got that side welded up. Just got to do a little bit of grinding to get some surface rust off on this side, and we'll weld it up. Then I'll go back in and put a plate on the inside to basically cover up the seam on there and to reinforce that. And the reason I do that on the inside is because there'll be a big weld seam out here. I don't want to have to grind it down flat to make a plate sit flat, where it'll already sit flat on the inside. There's no weld seam. So then I'll just be able to tack it all, weld it all the way around real easy, and it'll be super strong. So I'm going to get to welding down, and then we'll be about done. Okay, there we go, fully welded. All I gotta do is put the plates on the inside, which I'll get to later. I wanna do some more cleaning up of the frame first before I get in there, because that's all gotta be nice and clean, get all the surface rust off before you weld on it. But if we ground this down and made it nice and smooth and painted it, you would never know that that wasn't a factory frame, because we had a great spot to do that. And now we have a much shortened chassis, 112 inches, and we can start mounting our engine and transmission. That'll be next, and then move on to the cab and the front end. So stay tuned for future videos.